On this upcoming lackluster UFC fight night, we have a rising prospect who has a lot of upside making his second appearance in the UFC, and he is only 23 years old. Of course, I'm talking about Kevin Vallejos, who is a nasty dude with very crisp boxing. I mean, he took Gene Silva to a close decision when he was just like 21 years old, which is pretty impressive considering the way that Gene Silva has been tearing up the UFC to this point. Kevin Vallejos has drawn many comparisons to Ilia Topuria because of his great boxing technique. But of course, it could be an overreaction considering he hasn't proved himself on the big stage yet, but the hype is there. Kevin is taking on Danny Silva, who has been relatively inactive and inexperienced for someone who is 28 but only has one fight. He is 2-0 in the UFC, but both of those came by split decision. Kevin Vallejos has been super active and has gotten himself lots of experience in a short period of time because he has 15 wins, and his only loss comes to Gene Silva on the Contender Series. I think that Kevin Vallejos is going to overwhelm Danny Silva and probably load up a bunch of nasty combos that hit to both the head and the body, and eventually, he will finish the combo upstairs for a TKO. So my official prediction is for Kevin Vallejos to win by first round TKO. Neil Magny is an absolute veteran of the game and has the most wins in the history of the welterweight division, if I'm not mistaken, and also holds the record for most decision wins in UFC history. He has been a great gatekeeper of the division. Magny is taking on Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos, who is also a veteran of the game and has had lots of fights inside the UFC. Neil Magny is coming off one of the toughest periods of his career because he has taken an insane amount of damage in his last 4 fights. He beat Mike Malott, but he got beaten up for the first 2.5 rounds. He got smoked by Carlos Prates and Michael Moraes. Ian Gary was the first to embarrass him and make him look like a homeless man. Ian Gary kicked him straight off his feet like 10 times, and Magny survived, but looked like he didn't want to be there. Dos Santos is a really good kicker, but he also likes to throw kicks up high or even spinning kicks, which could cause a problem for Neil Magny. Neil Magny excels the most when he can make the fight a super boring clinch one, which is something he does often and has given him a legacy in this division. My final prediction for this fight is that Neil Magny will win by decision. Here we go. My favorite fight on the card is here, and it is between Esteban Ribovics and Elvis Brenner. Esteban Ribovics is coming off a controversial split decision loss against Nasrat Haqparast, which I thought Ribovics won. He is one of the most exciting fighters in the UFC right now. His fight against Daniel Zellhuber was fight of the year last year, and his split decision loss to Nasrat was also fight of the night. Ribovics is good at what he does because he can put out an insane amount of output in every single one of his fights. Through his career, he has managed to land an average of 8 significant strikes per minute, which is an insane amount. He only lands at a 43% rate, which means he throws a strike about every 3 seconds throughout his career in the UFC. It shows that he doesn't let his opponent get a chance to reset or breathe, which is why he wins lots of his fights by sheer volume, even if the other person can land damaging shots. I think Esteban Ribovics has the potential to be a ranked fighter, and Elvis Brenner has been a mostly 50-50 fighter in the UFC. My final prediction for this fight is that Esteban Ribovics is going to win by TKO just by sheer volume and his ability to overwhelm Elvis Brenner. We got Mateusz Rebecki coming back and fighting against Chris Duncan. Most people are looking to pick Rebecki because he went to absolute war with Orelbay, who was also a highly regarded prospect at the time. We also have to see that Chris Duncan is no slouch either. He is 4-1 inside the UFC, and 3 of his wins in the UFC were when he was an underdog, so people have been mistaken many times when picking against him. He also won on the Contender Series as a major underdog. Chris Duncan had a great win versus Jordan Vucenic, who was a highly touted person in the division, especially for his grappling, but Duncan was able to submit him with a guillotine, so there's that. The one thing that gives the advantage in this fight is that Jordan Vucenic was arguably outstriking Duncan, and Rebecki hits hard, so I think that he can crack Duncan, who is a little loose in the striking. Rebecki is going to have to barge into range, though, because his reach is only 66 inches, which is short for the division and probably a reach found in the 125-pound division. Either way, I think my final prediction for this fight is going to be Rebecki to win the fight by TKO. We have had a crazy last week and a half regarding this UFC Fight Night main event. The UFC were scrambling when looking for a new main event, and they managed to get Hyun-Sung Park, who was going to fill in on short notice, versus Steve Ertzug. This is also the first time in UFC history that we have an event headlined by both fighters being Asian, which is really cool to see and observe how the evolution of MMA in places like Korea and Japan has progressed. Tatsuro Taira has some of the best jiu-jitsu in the division, but the only problem with his grappling is that there is absolutely no damage via ground and pound. He had the back of Brandon Royval multiple times and was looking to maybe get a choke or something, and by the end of the round, he won it. But he spent so much energy not doing damage. I think this fight is going to be more competitive than the odds suggest because Taira is a rather poor striker, but I think that the experience difference will play a factor. I'm not even sure if Park has been in a main card, let alone a main event, so I think that Taira will win this fight by second round submission. I think his transitions are too good, and he is patient when on the ground, which sometimes hurts him because he doesn't do damage, but I think it will benefit him in this fight, and he will win by submission.